How do you follow up a game that is considered by many to be the best in the series? Why, by making a sequel to the previous best game in the series. Kirby's Dream Land launched the franchise and got its own direct sequel in Kirby's Dream Land 2, now bringing us to the end of the trilogy with Kirby's Dream Land 3. So, in more ways than one, this game marked the end of an era. Kirby's Dream Land 3 was released in November of 1997, a time when most people had started to move on to the Nintendo 64, which had already been out for over a year and a half. As such, this was the last first-party game to be released by Nintendo for the Super NES. So this game has a pretty big legacy to leave behind, especially coming off of Kirby Superstar. Does it succeed? Well, Kirby's Dream Land 3 is not only good, it's really good. If you could compare Kirby to Final Fantasy, this would be like trying to decide between FF4 and FF6. Although I will admit I have some personal problems that kept me from appreciating just how good it was until I revisited it for the purposes of this retrospective. I'd already owned Kirby Superstar for several years without even knowing there was a Kirby's Dream Land 3. I never even heard of it until my friend showed it to me one day, offering to let me borrow it in exchange for my copy of Superstar. And as much as I love Superstar, I'd already played it to death numerous times, so of course I did it, and I enjoyed it. Then he ended up losing Kirby Superstar. So yeah, you can probably imagine how mad I was with him and how disappointed I was to be stuck with a game that, while good, simply wasn't as much fun to me as Kirby Superstar. On the surface, they seem like very similar games, but Kirby's Dream Land 3 and Kirby Superstar feel incredibly different from one another. While Superstar is more fast-paced with an emphasis on action and variety, Dream Land 3 is much slower and more methodical with a focus on strategy and problem solving. So in the end, it's a matter of what style game you prefer. The story is almost a complete rehash of Kirby's Dream Land 2, except instead of dark matter, it's a strange black mass called the Hyper Zone. It lands on Popstar and stretches out its tendrils, covering the whole planet. Now it's up to Kirby to travel to each of the 5 corners of the planet and free each of the lands. Helping him this time are his animal friends from the previous game, as well as 3 new partners to flesh out the cast. Choo Choo the octopus is the first female animal friend, and she likes to ride around sitting on Kirby's head. She can't fly, but she can walk on ceilings, which has its uses. Naga the cat can't fly either, but has a really powerful triple jump. Then there's Pitch the bird. Nobody seems to like Pitch, and honestly, I don't really see why. I guess it's just the least original of the new cast. I mean, we already had a bird. Maybe a bat or a friendly bug of some kind would have been more interesting. The previous animal friends have also gotten a slight upgrade. Rick can no longer inhale, now simply dashing forward with his mouth open, but has gained the ability to wall jump and stomp on enemies, making him a major powerhouse in land-based levels. Co-op is back, introducing a friendly blob of black matter named Gooey. Although he had a minor role in Dream Land 2, this time he appears as a playable character, controlled by either a second player or the CPU. He plays identically to Kirby except for using his tongue instead of inhaling. This means you can attack underwater without a power, but is unable to eat 2 enemies at once above ground. I guess that's an acceptable trade-off. Unlike Superstar, Gooey can choose any power he wants and drop or pick up new ones at the player's discretion. The only limitation is that only one player can be using an animal friend at a time. The multiple attacks per power of Kirby Superstar are gone, now going back to the less is more aspect of Dream Land 2. The 7 copy abilities all return with a new 8th ability, Clean. With 6 animal friends, that provides 56 different attacks, which is a very impressive number. Most of them are identical to their appearance in Dream Land 2, provided you're using the same animal friend as before, but a few, particularly Kinds, have been slightly modified, including his Ice ability, which means it's time to pick a new winner for the best and worst powers of the game. Now, this is probably one of the hardest games to choose powers from because, well, honestly, they're not all that great. There are a couple of standouts like Ice with Ku and Fire with Kind, but in general, they're all very situational. You're constantly switching between them in order to find secret areas, so I'd almost say the game is designed to actually prevent you from picking one ability and blazing through the game all the way to the end. Almost every one leaves you with vulnerability frames or weak points where you're able to be hurt, which may have been the purpose. So when I say that best is a matter of personal preference, nowhere is that more true than in this game. I suppose if you forced me, I'd say my personal choice for most fun is Pitch with Clean. The area of effect on these water bombs is really spectacular, and you can aim them to attack up and down to clear out blocks as you need to. But like the others, there's no way you'll want to play through the whole game with just this power. As for the worst, I had to do a lot of research and comparisons, but I'm going to go with Nago and Ice. It does technically let you fly, but if you're going to do that, just grab Ku and use his awesome Ice ability instead. The level design and art style of Dream Land 3 are what really makes it unique. It has sort of a hand-drawn crayon look, which looks nice enough, but I personally prefer the crisp lines from Superstar. This time, in order to get 100% completion, you have to collect 30 star hearts to gain access to the final level. These are essentially the rainbow drops of this game, requiring you to do some pretty creative things to get them. There are levels where you have to beat it with a certain animal friend in order to make their girlfriend or boyfriend happy, some where you have to solve a minigame, pick up hidden items that require some tricky maneuvering or escorting an animal friend to an out-of-the-way location, and even some where you have to complete missions for other Nintendo characters like Samus and Professor Hector. Dark Matter from Dreamland 2 makes his return as one of the final bosses, as well as introducing a new entity known only as Zero. Yeah, insert joke here. But honestly, this boss is freaking amazing. He's probably one of the goriest Kirby bosses in the entire series, actually spraying blood at you as you fight, and even ripping his eye out when you defeat him, leaving red trails as he floats around. Wasn't this game supposed to be cute? Jeez, Nintendo. While I fully admit that Dreamland 3 is an amazing game, well deserving of a place in the pantheon of great Super Nintendo platformers like Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World, and Donkey Kong Country, I still prefer Kirby Superstar, and every time I see it, I remember that I traded away one of my favorite games of all time for this. I got the last laugh though. Guess which one is worth more to collectors due to its rarity? Boom, baby! Besides, I have the Dream Collection now, so I can play either of them anytime I want. In fact, I can play any of the May series games anytime I want. And there's one more we have to take a look at. But before we do, Kirby has to use his new powers to do some cleanup in an old home.